Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to our webinar. This is being recorded after the fact. So for those of you watching this in the future, hello, I'm Brenna. I'm here with Janet, and we are excited to share with you tips about teaching SEL with English language learners and how using Listenwise can help you. So Janet, can you go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janet Perez. I am a middle school ELD teacher here in California.
Awesome. Thanks, Janet. And I'm Brenna. I am your Listenwise account manager and customer success. All things go to Listenwise. I'm a former science and social studies teacher for many English language learners in the Las Vegas Valley. So a range of backgrounds here, bringing us a little bit more context for English, SEL, English with English language learners. It's a mouthful. All right, so our agenda today is we're going to do a little activity called Be the Student, where Janet and I are going to be the teachers and the students in the classroom. We're going to go over some best practices for SEL and English language learners. We're going to learn how to find stories on Listenwise and some supports. We're going to hear stories from the classroom teachers from both Janet and I, and then at the end we will allow for some questions. So our Be the Student activity, during this activity, you're going to put your student cap on, and we're going to model how a Listenwise lesson could be used in an SEL activity. So I want you to think about, you are now in 4th grade. Welcome back. You are 10 years old again. Lucky you. You have an intermediate English vocabulary, and I want you to think about how might you feel as a student in a classroom with intermediate English vocabulary. And think about what are some events that might have taken place in your day before arriving to school. Maybe you had to help your little brother or sister get ready for the bus. You had to take your uncle or aunt to work on your way to school. You had an opportunity to eat breakfast, or maybe you didn't. So think about all those things that you as a little 10-year-old might have experienced in your day so far. All right, so Janet, welcome to school today. Where are you on our mood meter? Can you pick a picture that you're feeling? Are you feeling happy or sad today? How are you feeling today, Janet?
I am feeling content.
Content. All right. Can you make a face that shows me your content face? Yeah, that's a great content face. Very good. I think I am feeling a little bit, let's see, where am I feeling? I'm feeling a little bit relaxed and tired. So kind of next to each other between the green and the blue. So I would show my face like, okay. So when using the mood meter with English language learners, it's really important to have some faces involved in our mood meter so students can see maybe how they're feeling if they don't understand the words. And with our English language learners, maybe they have a background in understanding the feeling but not being able to put the word to it. So we really want to have the picture and the word, so we're really linking those mood meters together. This is a really great way to start your class in order for students to check in with themselves and so other people around them know how to act and behave with them. Okay, Janet, we're going to do a little before listening activity before we listen to our podcast today. So in our podcast today, we're going to be talking about best friends. And I want you to first think on your head. So put your finger on your forehead and think about who is your best friend and how do you treat them? So we're taking a moment to think, who is my best friend and how do I treat them? Okay, now you're my shoulder partner, so I'm going to turn and talk to you, and I will go first since my hair is a little bit longer, and I'm going to share my best friend. Her name is Ayanna. She is my best friend, and I treat my best friend with kindness and listening compassion, and I try to be funny with my best friend. Janet, how about you? How do you treat your best friend, and who is your best friend?
My best friend is Alondra. She's my best friend in the whole world. And I treat my best friend with respect and kindness, and I try to be helpful with my best friend.
Those are great qualities for a best friend. So in your classroom, you might then say, okay, let's share out what Janet said. So I would say, Janet said that she treats her best friend with respect and kindness. So sharing that out as a whole class, making sure your students are listening to what their partner said. And then it takes a little bit of pressure off of them to be like sharing all what they said. They can share what their partner said. And it also checks to see if they were listening to what their partner said. Always practicing those listening skills. Okay, now we're going to do a little vocabulary activity. So, Janet, I'm going to say a word to you, and you're going to look at the pictures, and you're going to choose number 1, number 2, or number 3. So, our first word is compliment. Compliment. It is a verb, so it's something that we do. And it's to say something nice or to give or praise. So if I had to look at a picture, which one do you think shows the word compliment?
I think picture number 3 shows the word compliment.
Yes, you are correct. If I said, you are cool, I would say, thanks, Janet. That's a nice compliment. Okay, our next vocabulary word is congratulate. Congratulate. It is a verb. It's something that you do. It's to celebrate someone and by sharing in their happiness. So if we are celebrating someone, we are doing what? Janet, which picture shows someone congratulating someone else?
I think picture 2 shows someone congratulating another person.
And what in picture 2 shows that they are congratulating or celebrating someone? What are they doing in picture 2?
Oh, the man in green is giving the man in red a pat on his shoulder, and they're both smiling.
Yes, so the key is maybe the smiling or the pat on the shoulder saying, good job, congratulations. And our last verb, console. It means to comfort someone when they are feeling sad or upset. Console. It's a verb. It's something that you do. Okay, Janet, so which picture do you think shows someone consoling someone else?
Picture number 1 shows someone consoling another person.
But how do you know that they're consoling? What are they doing?
Well, one of the children in the picture looks kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person seems to be consoling them by putting their hand on their back.
Now, in both picture number 1 and picture number 2, they're patting them on the back. How do you know that one is congratulate and the other one is console? What do you think?
I think that the big difference is the lack of smiles in picture 1, because one of the kids is looking really sad. Kind of looks like they're crying too. And in picture 2, both people are smiling.
Very good. Yeah, great job using those clues in the picture to help us remember the words. So I'm going to say the word and I'm going to ask you to repeat the word after me. Can you say compliment?
Compliment.
Right, compliment. The next word, congratulate.
Congratulate.
Congratulate. Yay, good job. Congratulate. And our last word, console.
Console.
Console. All right. So as we listen to our story today, I want you to think about these 3 words. Another thing that we're going to do, if you're watching this online, you can take a screenshot of this, but throughout the listening, Janet, I would like you to check off these sentences that you see. So great friends, compliment, console, congratulate, and console. We just talked about those 3 words, so let's be listening. We develop new friendships and strengthen existing ones. How and why you should be a best friend to yourself. The world's leading experts on meditation and mindfulness. Meditation and mindfulness. Best friends say loving and positive things to one another. Apply this to your everyday life. Tell your best friend to get a good night's sleep. I felt great in the morning. You need to be your own best friend. A best friend to yourself also. So we hear the word friend a lot. So let's listen to our story and see if we can find these sentences. As we listen along, I ask that you follow along with our transcript, just like you would be singing karaoke. So the name of our story is How to Be Your Own Best Friend. How to be your own best friend. Okay, make sure your graphic organizer is out as we begin to listen.
Hi, this is Eva Cartman from the Dream Big Podcast Show, the place to go to learn, laugh, and grow. Last month, I shared the 3 C's of being a great friend. Great friends compliment, congratulate, and console. With school back in session, I thought it was a great opportunity to share how you can start out the year with the right mindset to develop new friendships and strengthen existing ones. Today, I wanted to share another piece of advice that may sound a bit backwards at first, but by the end of the episode, you'll know exactly what I mean. Instead of focusing on how to be a great friend to others, I want to share how and why you should be a best friend to yourself. This is something that I recently heard Deepak Chopra, probably the world's leading expert on meditation and mindfulness, say in a guided meditation. Specifically, Deepak said, and I quote, "You're always your own best friend, and best friends say loving, positive things to one another." For instance, what would you say to a best friend who's discouraged or sad? How about, "You did great," or "You're strong," or "You're wonderful just as you are"? Now, how about saying those words to yourself whenever you start to doubt the beauty of your light? I just love that quote. And more importantly, I love how we can all apply that to every part of your life. Before you take action or make a decision, ask yourself, what would I say or do here if I was advising my best friend? Would you ever tell your best friend not to try something because they could never do it? Of course not. Then don't tell yourself that. If you know that your best friend is exhausted and hasn't slept well recently, would you force your friend to stay up late and play with you? Of course not. You'd tell your best friend to get a good night's sleep. And when you're feeling tired, you should do the same. Just the other night, it was actually earlier than I typically sleep, but I was feeling super tired. So I told my parents that I was going to bed and got a few extra hours of sleep. And guess what? I felt great the next morning. If you knew your best friend had a big test or a big race the next day, would you give your best friend all the junk food in the world? Of course not. You would want your best friend to have a nutritious meal and drink plenty of water so they feel full of energy the next day. You should do the same for yourself in that situation also. I think by now you can see where I'm going with this. Deepak is absolutely right. We need to be our own best friend. We need to take care of ourselves so that we have the energy and mindset to go out there and be the best version of ourselves. So while yes, I do want you to practice the 3 C's this year and congratulate, compliment, and console your friends at school, I also want you to be mindful that you need to be a great friend, a best friend to yourself also. This is Eva Cartman. I'll see you next episode. Bye.
All right, Janet. So during the next few minutes, I want you to draw the picture of what is a good friend. All right, we're going to pause from being the student there. And Janet, what is one thing that you might ask your students after this story to really ground them in some social emotional learning skills? What is one question that you might ask after they draw their picture?
I would ask them to explain if they have ever done the action that they drew with themselves. So maybe when they're sad, right? And if they drew a picture of themselves consoling a friend, then have they ever consoled themselves when they were sad? Did they ever give themselves a little pep talk when they were feeling down?
Awesome. All right, Janet, thanks so much for sharing your experience and playing the role of our student. So this is just one way you can use an SEL lesson on Listenwise to really integrate this into your classroom. So why are we here? Why are we talking about SEL for English language learners? From our resources, from Colin, Colorado, Colorado, excuse me, I apologize. We have found this goal as our big picture. So SEL can help young people and adults thrive personally, academically, develop and maintain positive relationships, become lifelong learners, and contribute to a caring, just world. So as we talk about this topic today, I want us to really think about how we're shaping our young individuals and the experiences that they have before coming into the classroom with you into more kind adults and thinkers out in the world. So our first context that I want to talk about is self-awareness. So social emotional learning helps with self-awareness. It helps the ability to understand one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behaviors across contexts. So one way that you might be able to do this in your classroom is identifying one's emotions. Just like we did at the beginning of the webinar, we looked at a mood meter and had us check in with ourselves. We also had students draw pictures and share how they were feeling about this. And just being able to communicate that to those around them can really influence culture. Janet, I know that you told me before that you have a mood meter or use the mood meter in your classroom. Could you give us a brief sharing about how that is done?
Yeah, so we have our Monday check-ins in my class. And in my class, we do them through a Google form. But our Google form has the mood meter on it. And it has the picture and the word so that my students can make that connection, especially my newcomers who are brand new, right? They're still learning the language. So a lot of visuals are extremely helpful for them. And so every Monday they come in and they have about 10 minutes to go through their Google form, and they have to tell me, how are you feeling right now? And they'll choose from the picture and they'll write the word. And one of the questions will be like, why do you think you feel this way? And they have to explain, what is one kind thing you can do for yourself today? And what is one kind thing you can do for another person? And then at the end of the little check-in form, it's like, do you have anything else that you want to share with me? And they know that that's their opportunity to tell me, if they had a horrible weekend or if they had something exciting happen to them. And so they get to write that. And then we do another check-in, and that one depends. Sometimes we'll do it on a Wednesday. Sometimes we'll do it on a Friday. I like to mix it up sometimes. And I check in and I go, how are you feeling? And we do the form again. And so it's built a really great relationship between myself and my students because they feel like they can share this stuff with me. But also it's given them the vocabulary so that when they're having a bad day, they do come up and they go, I'm feeling angry today. I don't know why, but I'm feeling angry. And then we have a little conversation. Okay, well, do you need space? Do you need to go talk to the counselor? Do you want to go drink water? And we try to troubleshoot and help them kind of regulate so that they can be active participants in the classroom.
Great. Awesome. That sounds like a great classroom culture, especially with middle school. I remember using the mood meter in my classroom as well. And so many new emotions are coming up for them and feelings, and they're not understanding where they're coming from or what's happening. And so giving them that vocabulary and language just gives them more empowerment to feel seen in the classroom. So thanks for sharing. We're going to move on to number 2, which is self-management. This is ability to manage those emotions that they were having, the thoughts and the behaviors effectively in different situations to achieve goals and aspirations. So Janet, just like you were sharing, once the students are able to figure out, okay, I'm feeling angry today, then taking it the next step forward is that self-management. Like, oh, what do I need right now? Do I need a break? Do I need help? Do I need a friend? And so that really speaks to how they build on each other. Once you have self-awareness, then you can start to manage that. Once they're able to manage that, so setting personal and collective goals. So helping our English language learners start really small and feel like they can reach the goals, and also tapping into their interests. So one way that I did this in my classroom is my students love to learn about space. I taught science. So for our goals, we set full moon goals. So each time we had a full moon once a month, we took a few minutes just to write down a small goal. And then the students were able to see, okay, within the next month, before the next full moon comes, can I reach this goal? So it was really connecting to that science, that interest, something that happens very often. They weren't big goals, but maybe they were like, I will sit quietly in class for the next month. Or even it's like, I'm going to ask 3 questions when I don't understand, or I'm going to check in with a friend. So small little goals that really help them manage themselves and how they showed up in the classroom. It was so much fun. The goals were crazy at first, and then we were able to hone them in sometimes. But it really allowed them to check in with themselves once a month. Our next one is social awareness. So once students are able to be self-aware, self-managed, then we want to build some social awareness. Janet, could you read this definition to us, please?
Yeah. So the abilities to understand the perspectives of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and contexts.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so really being able to take an understanding of others' perspectives. One way that I would really like to see this happening is using those podcasts in the classroom to see, oh, this person came from this area, or this person has this experience, and understanding those cultural norms to build on top of each other. Then, once they're able to listen to a story, using those scaffolds, using sentence stems, using the graphic organizers to really help students have a conversation about this. So maybe where people came from and their background, what their family does. I always like to have students draw pictures of their family, what they did on maybe a long break, and then come back and we can talk about it and see, oh, I did this with my family, you did this with your family, but really allowing for those diverse backgrounds to happen. This also allows for really culturally relevant pedagogy for students to have in their classroom, being like, this is about my life and this is what I want to share. But we have lots of podcasts on our platform that really talk about those diverse backgrounds of students. Lots of voices from around the world. Relationship skills is our next pillar. So after students are able to become aware of themselves, manage themselves, understand the social awareness around, now we want to help them start building those relationships. So the definition says ability to establish and maintain healthy and supportive relationships to effectively manage settings with diverse individuals and groups. So just like we listened to in the story, it's really showing them how to be a good friend. How do I show up for myself? How do I show up for those around me? And really navigating this. One way that I built relationships in my classroom using both problem solving, teamwork, as well as going back a slide, different scaffolds, is I have talking chips in my classroom. And the students felt like they were playing a game more so, where they had a conversation, they had to put their chip in the middle, and these were just math manipulative blocks that I used in my classroom, but each student got their own set of chips, and they had to put them in the center. So they each took turns talking, they felt like it was very hands-on, and they were problem solving together. Here, I'll put into the link notes on the webinar is 6 strategies to help them learn and have collaboration in their classroom. So if you're looking for more strategies, we have some outlined here. Janet, could you share one way that you've used relationship skills to have an activity in your classroom?
Yeah, so with my ELs, we use the 4 L's of productive partner talk. So, looking at your partner, leaning in, listening, lowering your voice. So we practice that a lot. They will have to, every day they have a quick write that they do. And so they get quiet time and thinking time for writing. And after that, they turn and talk to their partners. And then we also do parallel lines in my classroom where we have the two lines and they, line A shares first and then line B will share and we'll rotate so that everyone gets to share at least, 2, 3 times. And then another one that we like to do in my class that my kids really enjoy is, I hope I get the name right. It's stand up, hand up, pair up. They love that one where, they all have to stand up. They have to roam, walk around the room while I play some silly song. And when the music stops, they have to quickly pair up and give each other a high five. And then they take turns sharing their writing. And they really love that.
Yeah, it's always great to get them moving around.
Yes.
And thinking, okay, when is the music going to stop? So really building that relationship. And then they're not just chatting with the same person that they're always sitting next to or always with their friends. So it really builds that diverse conversation for the students. I love that activity. And last but not least, once they're able to make relationships and build them, so how do we then have responsible decision making? With middle schoolers, this is so important in letting them know what is responsible and how do I make that conscious decision. So the abilities to make caring and constructive choices about personal behavior, social interactions across diverse situations. So anticipating someone's actions, making sure students know the consequences, setting expectation, and providing lots of examples. So one way that I did this in my classroom is before any activity, I had a list of expectations that on the board that the class went through. We read them through, and each of my students had to give a thumbs up. Every student had to give a thumbs up. We would sit and wait until they all put their thumbs up to make sure that they understood the expectations and the consequences were always listed for them. So they're not like, oh, if I do this, like, will this happen or not? It's very clear. We've agreed upon it, and expectation and norms are set in our classroom. So making sure that they're aware of that is really important, especially coming from different backgrounds. Some things are more appropriate than others, and depending on the context. So all of this to be said, in these activities can be built into these strategies can be built into activities for a social emotional learning lesson. So on Listenwise, we have 2 different ways that you can find social emotional learning lessons. You can check out our collections. We have various different collections for SEL and ELD lesson library, SEL in high school, SEL in elementary school. So we've really chosen a lot of lessons that are targeted to your grade level audience. Another way is just simply going to our search bar and searching SEL, and you can find current events, you can find lessons, and various activities that meet these needs. Another thing that's really helpful, just like we showed the vocabulary words with the pictures, is in our ELD lesson library, we have vocabulary flashcards. So if you choose an ELD SEL lesson, you can have the students just work through the flashcards on their own without even needing to take the time to create them ahead of time. So this is a really great resource for you and your students to take advantage of. And last but not least, just like we listened before and we use the transcript, using the transcripts and other supports like our text help toolbar, it's the little blue toolbar that you'll see on your student accounts, to making sure that students understand the words that they are learning. And those are some of the extra supports that you can use within an SEL lesson for your ELD lesson library and your students. So Janet, I am curious to hear how you've used with your ELD students an SEL lesson in your classroom and how that went. Could you share that story with us?
Absolutely. So when my class, we used this particular lesson, which is connecting through art at the border. and it's about the border tuner art installation that took place. And it was such a great opportunity to activate and build background knowledge. When I showed students the pictures, they were able to go, oh, that's the border. And we talked about the searchlights that they used in the installation and talked about how they've seen those at the circus when the circus is in town or a new store opens. So before we even started the lesson, we tapped into all of those prior experiences. So they realized, first of all, that they already knew a lot of the information. So that kind of built their confidence. And it focused on their assets rather than their deficits. So again, when we're working with EL students, that's kind of like the big shift right now, right? We want to focus on what they're bringing to the table rather than what they're lacking. And by, activating that prior knowledge and background knowledge, we're able to do that. And then in terms of the active listening, I think that's also a big component of just SEL, right? We're not just sitting there quietly listening while someone speaks, we're actually hearing what they're saying. Because a lot of our students, or a lot of my students, will come in their mind, based on what they've experienced, they're being respectful if they're just sitting there listening, right? If I'm talking and they're just listening, as long as they're not making noise, they're listening, right? But we want them to be active listeners. We want them to understand what is being said and be able to explain what they heard, right? It's not just sitting there quietly. And so one of the things that we do is vocabulary. So I usually print out their little vocabulary words. And as we're listening to the story, they will add a check mark. After every time they hear one of the vocabulary words, they'll do a check mark. And then the fill in the blank organizer, we also used it for this particular lesson. And that was really fun because they ended up trying to compete with one another in class because they all wanted to make sure they got the blanks. And so after the first time we listened to the story, I said, okay, well, did we get all the words? They're like, no, no, no. And I would say, okay, well, do you need me to tell you the words? No, play it again, play it again. And so they listening to it over and over. And every time, I think we listened to the podcast maybe 3 times. And by the third time, everyone in class had all the words. And obviously, we had to work on, the spelling of them, but that's okay. We can work on that. But they were actively listening and trying to find all those missing words and phrases. So that was really fun. And it's interactive. They started helping one another and even like asking me, can you go back before I would instead of replaying the whole story, they'd be, can you just go back? I think I missed it. And so I would just go back and they would rehear a little section. So it was a really interesting way of encouraging them to be active listeners, but also to be helpful with one another and to advocate for themselves.
It sounds like that one activity really created a lot of community, helping each other, advocating for themselves, having that self-awareness, knowing what they knew before. I really like how you spoke about that background knowledge of, yes, I already know a lot about this topic. Okay, now I'm going to make sure, how do I think about this in another light? So I think that's wonderful. A little bit more about this, I think.
Yeah. And so we ended up talking about what is art, because initially in their minds, art had to be a painting or a drawing, and they didn't they slowly came to the understanding that art is just the way we communicate an idea or an experience with someone, right? So art can be a dance, art can be can be a little chant that we do in class, or the way we clap. Art is not necessarily a painting or a drawing. And so they got to see that part of it, but also we talked about the importance of being able to communicate with others. And a lot of my students, they are divided by borders from their families and friends. They had to leave their home country to be here. And We talked about why is it so important to still be able to have that connection to the people that you left behind, right? And why is it important to share our experiences with people who are different than us? Because in the story, there's a part where there's a mother who's taking her children to the art installation, and they were just really nervous about participating in this. But the mom was able to explain to them that, there's on the other side of this border, there's kids just like you. They like the same things that you do. They go to school, they like chips, they like cookies, right? And so that was something that my students were able to also tap into as we were having these conversations and share about their own experiences as well, because this then led into talking about their immigration stories and how they got here and whether it was difficult or easy. And there was a comparison between, oh yeah, I did that when I was coming over, and the emotions that they felt. So again, identifying and naming their emotions, and understanding that we all have feelings and we all experience moments where we're scared and we're nervous or where we don't know what to expect. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So it really created this amazing little conversation community. And so much so that it ended up taking us about a day and a half to get through this lesson because the bell rang and they were like, we're going to do this tomorrow, right? And I go, of course. And so, the next day we picked up our conversation and I think I gave them maybe like 20 minutes to wrap it up, but they absolutely loved it.
Wow, that sounds like an incredible lesson just from this one story. You really got to know your students really well, and they felt vulnerable to share, and it was super culturally relevant for them. And wow, that just sounds like it was a great experience. Thanks so much for sharing about your lesson. So as I spoke before, I wanted to share some of the ways that I have used SEL in my classroom as well through some pictures. So like I spoke at the beginning, the mood meter. I had this in my classroom. As soon as my students walked in, they found their sticky note and they put it on. I didn't have pictures because I didn't realize the need of that at the time, and now I do, but we were really focusing on the science of it and how to use a graph and how to understand plus and minuses. As you can see in the middle, there's expectations. Each class, whenever we had a little issue with making sure that everyone was following the rules and being in a classroom setting, we would reset our expectations and the students would make them up. They would be like, I expect this person and this person to do this. And like, okay, let's think about this as a whole class. What should we expect of ourselves in this setting? But it really gave the students the autonomy to know that, oh, my voice is heard and what I want in this space is important. And how I behave does affect others. You can see our full moon goals there in the middle of the graph or of the page. Sometimes they were put on sticky notes. Sometimes they were held up a little bit more sturdy, but the students would always just hang them up there. Another thing that I would do in my classroom, as you can see underneath where it says seeds, is I put student artwork up all the time. So Janet, you were saying art comes in many different forms. My students love to draw pictures, and a lot of the things that they had to create were pictures. So we would hang them up in the classroom and really having them feel like this is their classroom. And they can share their stories, they can show their friends, and kids would look at them in the other class periods. I had 7 classes a day, so their friends could see their work. So really giving them that voice and that story. And last but not least, we decorated my door. What will you be? Each of the students got their little beehive, and we really tried to make this a collective matter. This was for a school competition, and it was just really fun to allow the students to think about, should we be kind and how will we be positive? So a couple of the ways in my classroom that I added SEL in to learn vocabulary and set expectations and goals. Last but not least, a couple more pictures. So I want to see if we can match the skill. I'm going to quickly share what each students are doing in this picture, in these pictures, and we're going to see if we can match the skill. So with the picture with the heart faces, this was my newcomer lunch. So anytime we had a new student in our school, especially if they were from another country, we had a newcomer's lunch for them. And some of the students, especially if they were able to be bilingual and in the conversation, they would have a special lunch in my classroom to feel included and just have friends and be like, these people are going to be nice to you. Below that is an escape room that the students were doing. So each team, at the end of each unit, I did an escape room for my students so that they could really work together and shine their different lights. In the upper right-hand corner, this is the talking chips. You can see my students having their little pieces of paper with their sentence stem and their chip, and they have to put it on it and match it. And last but not least, the students are making big posters and working on them together and quietly. Sometimes we had silent days where students would just draw. It was a science classroom, so really learning those skills. So Janet, let's check for understanding. The picture in the upper right-hand corner where the students are at lunch, which of these SEL skills do you think the students are showing in this photo?
I think that is relationship skills.
Definitely, yes. So having the students work together and chat and really bring in their background into the classroom and feel safe to be seen. Great. Underneath that one where the students are playing, or not playing, completing the breakout room, which skills do you think are identified there?
Ooh, I think that could be social awareness because they're working together. And so, there's always that quote that people show up in life the way they do in a game, right? So, how are they collaborating with each other?
Yeah, this also is a really great one for self-management too, because here they had to problem solve and be like, wait, I can't figure this out. Wait, how do I manage my frustration or manage those emotions that come up? And how do I overcome that? So that was a little bit of self-management too. And the talking chips, I already shared a little bit about what those ones were, both social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship building skills. And last but not least, the bottom one in the corner, Janet, what would you say those students are showing?
I would say relationship skills, definitely self-management because they're working together. And then responsible decision making, as in ensuring that everyone is able to participate and have the space to add their drawing or their input on the poster.
Yeah, definitely. And this also came with self-awareness too, in that, oh, how much time do I have to work on this? How much space do I have to work on this? So these are just some different examples of how in different classrooms, the talking chips were really great for my English language learners, especially using those sentence stems and knowing that they could participate and continue on and just making it a little bit more gamified. So just a few ways that these skills can be shown in a science classroom as well. Last but not least, before we end our webinar today, I want to give a little hook on our new product called LingoLift. This is for newcomers especially. We are launching the product for back to school, and it's going to be video lessons using watch, learn, speak sequence. So students will watch the video, then they will learn the words, and then they will speak the lines into the computer. So they're really working on growing their vocabulary at those early newcomer English levels. So if you have questions for me, please go ahead and send me an email. This is my email, my contact, other Listenwise information. So Janet, thank you so much for spending the last hour with us, sharing a lot about your classroom and how you're building social emotional language with your students.
Thank you.